On one morning in 1810, a single London house drowned under 1,000 unwanted deliveries. Coal, cakes, coffins, and even a mayor. And it all started with one very bored man and a silly little bet. Meet Theodore Hook, a stickman famous for two things: writing songs and being the most relentless prankster in all of England. If mischief were an actual job, he would have been knighted for it. One day Hook was walking with a friend when he pointed at a plain, ordinary house and made a ridiculous claim. He said he could make that boring little door the most talked-about address in the entire city. His friend laughed and bet him it was completely impossible, so they shook hands on it. Hook now had exactly 1 week to turn a forgettable front door into the talk of all London. Challenge accepted. So Hook sat down and began to write. Not one letter, not 10. He wrote roughly 4,000 letters, each one signed with the name of Mrs. Tottenham, the poor woman who actually lived in that house. Every letter was an order or an urgent invitation. Deliver coal here. Bring a cake here. Come tune a piano here. And please, all of you, arrive at the exact same time on the exact same day. Mrs. Tottenham had absolutely no idea. She was an ordinary widow living an ordinary life at number 54 Berners Street. She woke that morning expecting nothing more unusual than a quiet cup of tea. At 5 in the morning, the first knock came. A chimney sweep. She told him she had not sent for one, so he left. Then another sweep arrived. Then another. Then 12 more after that. A dozen confused chimney sweeps now argued on her tiny doorstep, each waving a letter insisting they were expected. And this was only the beginning. Behind them, the street was already beginning to fill up. Next came the coal, cart after cart of it, drivers demanding to unload enormous sacks nobody had ordered. Then came fishmongers with baskets of fish, and shoemakers carrying wobbling stacks of leather boots. Then a baker arrived, carrying a gigantic wedding cake. There was, of course, no wedding. Behind him came more bakers. And behind them, men delivering pianos, an entire church organ, and 40 confused pastry chefs. Furniture arrived. Beds arrived. 6 sweating men wrestled a piano toward a doorway it could never possibly fit through. The street was fast becoming a solid wall of carts, animals, and very angry tradesmen. Then it turned serious. Doctors rushed in, told a patient was dying inside. Then midwives. Then solemn priests, summoned to deliver last rites to a woman who was perfectly healthy and increasingly terrified. And then the undertakers arrived, carrying a coffin built to Mrs. Tottenham's exact measurements. She watched from her window as complete strangers delivered a coffin for a funeral that was very much not happening. By now the entire street was hopelessly gridlocked. Thousands of people were packed in shoulder to shoulder. Nobody could move. Nobody could leave. And still, somehow, the letters kept summoning even more. Then the truly important guests began arriving. The Lord Mayor of London himself, riding in his grand carriage, summoned by a letter so convincing that he had cancelled his entire day just to attend. Behind him came the governor of the Bank of England, then a duke, then the chairman of a major company, the most powerful men in London, all crammed together onto one tiny residential street. And where was Theodore Hook during all of this? He had quietly rented a room directly across the street. He sat by the window with a friend, watching the chaos unfold, absolutely delighted with himself. He watched dukes shout at coal men. He watched priests argue with pastry chefs. He watched a coffin bump straight into a piano. For Hook, this was the single greatest show London had ever staged. Eventually, the police were called in to untangle the enormous mess. But there were simply far too many people. Officers were swallowed whole by the crowd. It took most of the entire day just to clear the street. Poor Mrs. Tottenham spent the whole day turning people away, over and over, insisting she had ordered absolutely nothing. By evening, she was completely exhausted, thoroughly bewildered, and now accidentally famous across the city. The very next morning, every single newspaper in London ran the story. The whole city was talking about one address, which meant, technically speaking, Theodore Hook had absolutely and completely won his bet. His friend had no choice but to admit defeat. Hook had made a plain little house into the single most discussed place in all of England, using nothing but ink, paper, and thousands of innocent victims. Naturally, the furious authorities wanted to know who was responsible. An investigation began at once. Everyone suspected Hook, because of course they did. But they could never actually prove he had written a single letter. So Hook did the only sensible thing. He quietly slipped out of town for a while, taking a long, relaxing holiday in the countryside, until the anger finally died down and everyone found something new to discuss. To this day, the Berners Street hoax is remembered as one of the greatest pranks in all of history. Every delivery was real. The mayor was real. The coffin was real. Only the sender was completely fake. It worked because Hook understood something surprisingly clever. People rarely question a polite written request. Hand someone an official-looking letter, and they will happily show up carrying a piano and asking absolutely no questions. If you would happily deliver a cake to a total stranger just because a letter told you to, go smash that subscribe button right now. It costs nothing, and unlike Mrs. Tottenham, you will not regret it. As for Mrs. Tottenham, she somehow survived her strange day of fame. Though for weeks afterward, the occasional confused sweep or baker would still wander up, letter in hand, politely asking if she had ordered anything. One bored man, one single week, for 1,000 letters, and a prank so gloriously absurd that it outlived him by more than 2 centuries. History, it turns out, has always had a spectacular sense of humor.